The gang is together. The DC Sports Huddle. I'm Dave Johnson with George Wallace, Rob Woodfork, Chris Cichon, and wow, any vacation is over. Football is back. The Washington football team starting training camp in Richmond, Virginia. That means bring on the NFL. That means George Wallace, bring on the expense report. You are actually in Richmond, so we'll start with you. What's the story as we get set for the Washington football team year 2 under Ron Rivera?
Well, guys, I mean, the big stories are going to be two big things. The Jonathan Allen new contract, which is great. Logan Thomas as well. I think these are two great signs that you actually have competent football people doing the right things in the front office. Who knew that could possibly happen here? I think the fans should be excited about that. I think that getting them done, Ron, getting it done before camp is huge, and you don't have to worry about it moving forward. The other big topic, and as of this recording, we have not heard from Ron yet. It'll be later this afternoon. Big topic on everybody's mind is going to be the vaccines. I mean, you hear around all these teams now approaching 85, 90%. And last report, this team is around 60. So it could be a competitive disadvantage. The NFL is coming down, bringing the hammer down. And I rightfully with all this, as far as I'm concerned, and get these guys taken care of, because once you start the possibility of forfeiting games, messing with people's paychecks, you could divide a locker room very easily with all this. So I think it's going to be a positive. I think that this team will get to the certain vaccination rate, and we'll find out if that's going to be sooner than later. But when you look around the NFL, and I think it's now almost 80% of the players in the entire league have at least started their vaccination. So hopefully we will get there. I mean, look, it just for things is you can't eat with teammates on the road. You can't be in the weight room together. You can't travel. You can't be in meetings. I mean, that's a competitive disadvantage when you're not able to do that. So hopefully they will get things worked out here in the next couple of days and be on the right track.
Yeah, you might not be sold, but do it. You might not be sold, but do it for your teammate. And after all, your coaches went through a battle with cancers. We talked about. There's a lot of issues everyone's dealing with. Rob Woodfork, I jumped on you there, but what's on your mind?
No, you're good. No, I was saying they need to talk to Montez Sweat. He's on the record as saying he's not a fan of the vaccine. So that it'll be interesting to see him in particular. If he ends up taking it. For me, the top storyline for me that I'll be watching closely is how the offensive line performs, because we've talked about this before. I thought that Morgan Moses release was really, really risky, because you're asking Sam Cosmi, who, according to multiple draft experts, is a little raw for a second round pick anyway, and bringing in Charles Leno, who has had some injuries in the past. If you get hit at injuries along the offensive line, you are in some big trouble. And to lose a guy like Morgan Moses, who has been reliable, I'm not going to sit up here and act like the guy was an all-pro, but he was a solid, reliable starter. Since becoming a starter in 2015, he started and played every single game over the course of that time. So to have a guy who's that reliable, in one of those seasons, he was playing on 2 bad ankles. I can't remember what year it was. It was under Jay Gruden, but he was playing on 2 bad ankles at a time where they didn't have anybody healthy on the offensive line. So to have a guy who's reliable on the offensive line, and just to let him go, I mean, you need him more than you needed the $7.5 million. So I'm curious to see who steps up on the offensive line, and if they're able to weather the storm in terms of the injuries, because we love all the skill position players. We love what they did at receiver. We love what they have at running back. Everybody's still in love with Ryan Fitzpatrick right now, but none of that works if you don't have a functioning offensive line.
Right. Well, that's
you must have read George Wallace's question marks going to training camp as which unit concerns me the most. You must have read that. Thanks.
I did.
But you know what?
We always share a brain, George. Like we're so boring together because we agree on everything.
Well, but that's always the pivotal, in my mind, the pivotal question. People for 30 years have been asking me, what's the prediction of the Washington football team? I always just say 8-8, and it depends on how the offensive line fares. Right. And I'm saying that only half in jest, because for all the positions we talk about, and we know this team can defend, But it doesn't matter who the quarterback is or all these skill players, unless they have a cohesive, successive offensive line, you can turn mediocre in quick fashion. And Washington in the past has when it's dealt with injuries on the offensive line. Chris Cichon, we scheduled this entire DC Sports Huddle around your schedule. So this better be good. You better bring it strong. I mean, this was all around you.
I planned my evening the other night when DC United was playing around you, Dave. Unfortunately, my wife likes the show Love Island, and she was overruled, so I had to watch you on DVR. But as far as Washington goes and keeping an eye on storylines there, Rob Woodfork knows this. I wrote about how week one, I think that it's weird that Washington's an underdog in that game at home against the Chargers. Why? What are the question marks? Rob, I think you hit the nail on the head with the offensive line, because Curtis Samuel, that acquisition was crucial. I like getting Adam Humphries. I remember Dabo Swinney, all the great players out of Clemson he's talked about over the years, but one year he specifically mentioned Adam Humphries as a guy that can help a quarterback out, especially Ryan Fitzpatrick coming into this offense. And Logan Thomas, you mentioned too, George. I liked that they are securing him as their tight end. You know, I was kind of like, man, maybe they should go and try and trade up for a Kyle Pitts type guy at tight end. That's a lot of draft capital to be spending on a position where the best players in the game, Travis Kelce and George Kittle, were not first-round picks. So I think getting Logan Thomas there, he was sure-handed last year. I really want to see how these skilled to play. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of guys who are going to want the football in their hands. How is that going to be divvied up?
Well, and anybody else excited about to see the Fitzmagic show? Ryan Fitzpatrick with the Washington football team. He's maybe got a resume like no other.
Cautiously optimistic. I'll put it that way.
Well, you know what? We know we're going to get. You're going to have ups and downs. You just and it's going to be entertaining. That you just go into that knowing. And you know, we talked about the playmakers that he has now around him, and just a matter of getting him the football and let him go. You get Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Adam Humphries, just on the receiving core with Gibson and McKissick. That want to, top 1-2 combo in the backfield. The offensive line, okay, but it's the weapons are there, and that's going to help this defense, which hopefully takes another huge step. Because one of the other things we haven't talked about too, you win the division, you play a first place schedule, so it's going to be tough to cheese the point about that opening week being underdog. You and we say it every year, but you got to have a fast start. Because you're going to have stretches this year where you're playing, back to back playoff teams from a year ago. And then you end the season with 5 straight divisional games. So, you have to think also, Ron Rivera's got to think, and this could be interesting. If you are within, striking distance there, those last 5 weeks, do you start saving guys for that stretch run against NFC East guys? Do you rest a guy here and there before, It's going to be an interesting thing.
You're bringing load management to the NFL, George?
Hey,
we don't like it in the NBA. We're going to do it in the NFL now.
Yes,
I'm not saying. I'm just saying you got to think about that. Perhaps if you have 5 straight NFC East games at the end of the season that could decide your year, you want your guys healthy in December. That's all.
You make a good point. And actually, to answer that Fitzpatrick question, I think it totally depends on what you expect from the team. I expect this team to be competitive. I expect them to be entertaining. If you think Fitzpatrick is going to go out there and be like one of the top 3 rated quarterbacks in the league, I don't know if that's going to happen. And even if he does go out there and do that, I'm not exactly sure that that's going to be enough for Washington to win 12 or 13 games or whatever somebody might be expecting as a best case scenario. Because George, you referenced the first place schedule. Usually I don't put a lot of stock in that, but now with the 17th game, now you have to play a Buffalo Bills team that you would not have seen otherwise. You have to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Just the luck of the draw this year. You're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, you're playing the Chargers, you're playing the Raiders, you're playing these competitive teams.
The Bucs.
And so, the Buccaneers and the Packers. So you're seeing some of the best quarterbacks in the league. And while the defense can handle that, I'm not exactly sure that the offense is going to be able to put up enough points to keep up with the Patrick Mahomes and the Aaron Rodgers and all these guys who are really adept at running up the score on anybody.
Okay, so we're going to ask this question 3,000 more times between now and the end of the season. We'll just go around real quick. We'll start with you, Chris. So give that. Is this a playoff team? Can this be a playoff team again, Chris?
Absolutely. Their defense is strong enough. And real quick, back to the load management point, Sal Palantonio, he was the first one I really heard talking about it yesterday on another network, basically saying, yeah, this 17th game, if a team's up by a couple of touchdowns, you think Patrick Mahomes is going to be needing to go out on the field if they know that they've got the game in hand? It definitely affects betting markets. I don't really think, I wish they hadn't have done it, but coulda, woulda, shoulda. The NFL is going to grab their money. But I think 17th game or not, Washington is a playoff team, yes.
All right, Rob.
Oh, boy. I usually reserve my predictions for after the preseason because I want to see how injuries play out and all that. Just knowing the moves that they've made. And
but Dave asked you
they're
for
gonna
it
go
today,
into
so you
the
can't
season
wait.
with. Yeah. So today they look like a playoff team, but they don't string together consecutive good seasons. And we have done this before. We did it in 2012. We did it in 2015. We saw all the reasons why this team was going to be good and carry over or even get better. And then something wacky and wild happened. Now, I agree that there are adults in the room now that are running the show. And all of that is cause for, for feeling good about this team going in. But I just feel like that offensive line is going to end up being a turnstile this year, and that it's going to derail. And also, maybe the Giants or somebody else in the NFC East might be better than we think they are. So the seventh wild card, the seventh playoff spot makes it interesting and makes it plausible. But I think they look like a playoff team, but I think something crazy will happen to make them come up short.
Well, and that's why the NFL slogan is where all things are plausible. But that, in all seriousness, that's the way this league works. You can be bad and all of a sudden you're flirting with the playoffs and you can get stuck in a cul-de-sac and revert back. So it's because of the way the scheduling is done. It's a different schedule. Right. You've already referenced that the Washington football team is going to have to face this year. And again, we're just having some fun. Obviously, we're really before preseason, but why not? Everybody, and that's why I said, can this be a playoff team?
Yeah.
George.
I think they can be. I do. I think the ceiling for this team could be 10 wins. I mean, again, just like anything, a lot of things have to happen, but I think that with this defense and the playmakers you've added on offense with a competent quarterback, and let's be honest, this is with the two deals that are getting done, you're saving a lot of money. You're not going down franchise tag, road again with Jonathan Allen. And you get Logan for a lot less money than you would have to pay next year, especially if he has a good season. So you're setting yourself up for a pretty good franchise quarterback, I think, to go get after this year. But so for once, I think you are actually planning for the future. I think this can be a playoff team. Yes, I think the ceiling for this team could be 10 wins. And I think that you have a lot of mature players in that locker room now that have, that are behind Ron Rivera, that I think that are buying into this whole new culture thing that he is putting his stamp on this organization. So yes, I think it can be a playoff team.
All right, quickly, we'll close on the Nationals. It's clear when you have a stretch like the weekend against Baltimore, the blown saves, continuing the series with the Phillies, the window that was cracked open has closed. And now any speculation about what's going to go to the next couple of days of the trade deadline, wow, it could be interesting. I'll start with you, Chris, because I know you were one of the first that said trade Max Scherzer, or that would be a possibility. What you're thinking there, and what do you think is going to happen over the next week?
Well, now I'm kind of thinking, how could they possibly trade Max Scherzer? Juan Soto faces the franchise, so is Max Scherzer with the arm. And Kyle was texting me, the anchor, Kyle Cooper, this past Saturday when he was scratched. He goes, dude, don't you think it's weird that he's getting scratched right before the trade deadline? And I was just like, I can't picture Washington giving him up. They have so many games still left with New York. Now, what really hurts the Nats this year is that all three teams out of the NL West are going to be making the playoffs. So you basically have to win the division. But to get swept by the Orioles, for Brad Hand to blow the save again against the Phillies, I mean, just too many things are going wrong, and you can really get a massive haul for Scherzer. So as much as I couldn't believe it, I'm really starting to now. I don't think they do it in division, but maybe a team like the Cardinals. Isn't he from St. Louis? That could be a good possibility there. Both sides work out. Scherzer's not going to turn down any deals, so he said. So it's looking more and more likely, unfortunately.
All right, go to you, Rob. What do you think, Nats, right now? Given
I think they should trade Scherzer. Actually, the Washington Post just posted something basically saying how complicated his contract is. So it could be too complicated to pull off. But I think that, I mean, look, their farm system is not what it was in the last several years ago when it was one of the deepest in Major League Baseball. So I think they have to really focus on retooling and not quite rebuilding. I don't think they're there yet, but they're not as good as we think they are. And I think we're all looking at them still through the prism of the World Series run in 2019. This is not that team, because we've seen them go up against good teams. I mean, what the Padres did to them was unbelievable. I mean, they hung 40 on them over a weekend. So they're not as close to the good teams as we think they are. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. It would be a minor miracle if they did. So I think with all that in mind, they have to focus on getting their minor league system, beefing that back up. And the best way to do that is to use Max Scherzer as bait, for lack of a better term, to reel in some more picks.
Yeah, the time that definitely appears to be now, because I think full credit should be given to this team for huffing and puffing and making us believe, following Davey Martinez and making you think, well, if it breaks the right way, maybe this team can contend. But there have been too many injuries, too much inconsistency. And now the bottom line was, we believed, I think it was a consensus, it had to be above 500 going into August. And that's just not going to happen. George?
Yeah. And I've been thinking about this too a lot. The Yankees did this. What if you trade him and you tell Max, look, go win something, and we're going to team friendly, you're coming back for a couple of years. Who they do it with? Chapman, right? The Yankees, did they do that? Bring him back. Mm-hmm. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. Max loves DC, and I think he would do anything to help. I think that would be huge. I'm not trading Trey Turner. I'm not doing it. No. I build, if you can't break it, you can't unload everybody and break the whole thing down, because you can build around Turner and you can build around Juan Soto. So I think, and you control Soto for a while in turn. So I'm not trading Trey Turner. If you want to go unload Max, which you didn't think would be just unfathomable, as Chief's talking about, you didn't think that could be a possibility, and get a big haul in return, and then maybe bring him back. Especially, and here's the reason I'm talking about bringing him back. Strasburg might be done, people. We don't know anything about Strasburg and what's happening with him. So, you want to blow the whole thing up. I don't know about that, but I think you're seeing more and more that it's heading that way. Now, Max does have veto power, right? He has no trade, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I think he basically said he wasn't going to waive it for any reason. But You're right about Strasburg. Doesn't he have like the David Wright potential syndrome, that like he was never right from and could ever play again? I mean, it is worrisome.
Don't bring up that name.
Right.
I know.
Well, on that cheery note, we've come to the end of the WTOP Huddle, but it's going to be interesting.
Washington's going to the Super Bowl, but not the World Series.
And Ovechkin's back. So
and Ovi's back.
And Ovi's back.
Yep.
We knew that was going to happen. And by next week for the DC Sports Huddle, we'll have a draft pick, we think, to talk about as the NBA draft is coming up. So, wow. Everything, the confluence, I think, which
wait, Dave, what about the Wizards and the Bradley Beal situation, right? Did I see a headline who was saying that they want to know by draft night? Is that right?
Yeah, the next 48 hours, there's been a lot of speculation flying around about everything. So it's this time of year when you start, in the NBA anyway, when these stories start flying around and you don't know whether it's agents putting it out there or who is where or how much credence you should give to some of these stories. And you're saying, let's just get to November and play, because now your head starts to hurt at all the possibilities. But next 48 hours, going to be interesting. Tommy Shepard's not returned my call lately. He's pretty busy, I think. So. Listen, as always, we appreciate your time on the DC Sports Huddle. For George Wallace, Rob Woodfork, Chris Cichon, I'm Dave Johnson. Thanks for finding us.
Break.